Am I the antagonist for refusing to help my family financially? I live with my family members who often ask me to lend them money. They never pay me back, and it has put me in a tough financial situation. Recently, I decided to stop giving them money. Now they are upset with me and calling me selfish. Am I the asshole for refusing to help them out financially? I, 31 years old female, just paid off my townhouse in a lump sum. I bought the house at 24 with my husband, boyfriend at the time, and we maxed out our lump sum payments for those years. Before that, we spent 3 years and paid off most of our student loans. We thought there would have been loan forgiveness and interest was frozen, so we still have some of that, but we are going to pay that off before the end of the year. My husband and I are pretty frugal and good with money. My family really are not good with money, and my parents both work with decently paid jobs now, but they had 5 kids, so my mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. My dad has a car hobby, and so apart from his cars and a small apartment, they don't have much now. My parents downsized when most of us left and bought an apartment and used the sale on their home to pay off their debts. I did not know this, but my yearly annual statement, different than my monthly statements, were in paper as well as online, so they got sent to my parents. I used to have them as my mailing address and forgot to change it. They called to ask for money again, and I went with what I always do. I told them I don't have any, and they sent a picture of my annual statement showing my mortgage didn't have much on it, and told me I was clearly lying because I paid off my mortgage so fast. I could have helped a bit, but I just got frustrated after seeing them spend anything I have them on stuff I wouldn't even spend on myself. Like $4,000 for a sofa. And my mom always used to guilt me for not helping them enough, saying she was a stay-at-home mom because of us, her kids, so we should help her. They don't bother asking my other siblings because they are all struggling, but now that they know I have a paid-off house, they are pressuring me. My husband and I agreed to put everything we could towards maxing out our Roth and 401k after we pay off our student loans, so he is not going to be happy with my parents begging. I'm sick of it, but I also feel guilt that I'm not helping them, even if they waste what we used to give them. Congratulations on paying off your townhouse. That's a huge accomplishment. It sounds like you and your husband have been very disciplined with your finances, and that's definitely something to be proud of. Dealing with family members who are not as financially responsible can be challenging, especially when they start pressuring you for money. It's important to prioritize your own financial goals and not feel obligated to support them, especially if they are not using the money wisely. It's okay to set boundaries and focus on your own future and security. Your parents may not understand your perspective, but ultimately you have to do what's best for you and your husband. Keep up the good work with your financial planning and stay strong in managing these tough family dynamics. Am I the antagonist for refusing to help my parent because they do not want to bother my siblings? I have a contentious relationship with my mother, and we recently started talking after a 6-month period of zero communication. We both have legitimate problems with each other. I believe her reaching out to me was more because my 3 siblings were getting tired of her and they started to shun her. I did take the opportunity to reconnect because life is short, but this time with firm boundaries. One of those boundaries was do not offer her money or do anything for her. Why? Because she does these amazing things for my siblings, like paying their rent, helping them buy a house, paying their legal fees, etc. But she didn't do anything for me when I needed it. To add insult to injury, all she does is complain about how badly she's treated by my siblings when she does so much for them. Literally, my mom hasn't given me money since I was in high school. I've given her more money in the last 10 years than she's given me in the last 20. Recently, my mom asked me for $400 for a storage unit and to help her move to a smaller place. I asked why she couldn't ask my other siblings, and she said they have their own things going on. One is having another child, one is moving, one lives out of state, and didn't wish to bother them. I said no. In the past, I would have said yes, and it wouldn't be any skin off my back, but then I'd feel angry towards her for asking me for help and money when she hasn't done anything for me but does so much for others. I told her she gives my siblings tens of thousands of dollars a year, so she needs to bother them. She said they helped her out too much. I said no, I'm not here to give you money and to help you with things so you don't have to cause an inconvenience for your children who you bankroll at my expense. If you were paying my rent or help me get a house, then I'd help you at the drop of a hat, but you don't. Of course, my siblings are outraged and saying that I'm selfish and how they've been the ones helping her out over the last few years and shouldn't shoulder it all. In this situation, it sounds like you're setting some necessary boundaries with your mother, especially when it comes to financial matters. It's understandable to feel frustrated when you see your siblings receiving significant support while feeling neglected yourself. Your decision to prioritize your own well-being and not feel obligated to constantly bail out your mother is valid. It's important to communicate openly and honestly with your family members about how you feel and why you're making these choices. Humorously, it seems like your siblings are feeling a bit miffed that the bank of mom isn't as readily available to them anymore, and they've been left to handle the situation themselves. Remember, taking care of yourself and your own needs is not selfish, it's self-preservation. Keep those boundaries firm and continue to navigate this complex family dynamic with grace and understanding. Am I the antagonist for doing all the work myself, without letting the rest of the group know? Summary: school group research project. My group sucks. I did the research, sent them the data, and asked them to write the final article. It was subpar, so I rewrote everything without informing them. Submitted. We received almost full marks. They found out and are upset with me. Am I the jerk? Full story with a lot of details. Just some context. I'm studying in an international school in Australia. All students here are from different parts of the world. I have very high objectives which require me to have my grades as high as possible. I have a 2-month school group work with 2 individuals from China. We have to conduct research and then write an article about it. These 2 individuals have almost zero English skills. They don't care about grades, and they don't care about learning. I'm not going to lie, when I discovered I had to work with them, I was already looking down on them. Instead of each of us doing different parts and merging them in the end, they preferred to do every step of the project together. I thought they wanted this to avoid having any specific responsibility, but I agreed. During class, whenever we had to work on the research, the 2 individuals just kept playing on their phones, leaving me to do the work alone. Due to this, I got frustrated and decided to stop interacting with them and work alone. After a few weeks, as we had to show our teacher our progress, they confronted me, stating that I can't do everything alone and that I needed to allocate some work to them as well. This made me feel bad for looking down on them. At the start of the next class, I sent them the raw data and asked them to sort it, which is relatively simple, while I handled the outline and introduction of the article. Whenever I glanced at them, they were chatting amongst themselves, playing on their phones, so I assumed they had already completed their tasks. By the end of the class, they mentioned that their English wasn't proficient enough to sort the data and requested me to do it and allow them to work on the article. I was annoyed but agreed. On the same day, I filtered the data, sent them all the information, and even explained how to compose the article. 2 weeks later, a few hours prior to the deadline, they sent me what they had written, and it was poorly done. It seemed it was generated by ChatGPT. They didn't utilize any of the data I provided them. In fact, they wrote the exact opposite of what I had discovered through the research. I was extremely frustrated, sent them an audio detailing all the issues with the article, hoping they would rectify it. However, they insisted on submitting it as it was and fixing it later, post-deadline. I was greatly upset, rewrote everything, and submitted it without informing them. We received nearly full marks, but once they realized that I hadn't submitted their work, they became furious, stating that it wasn't what we had agreed upon. Am I the jerk? In a school project with 2 mates who ain't exactly Shakespeare with English, I took the reins and rewrote the article we needed to ace. They were texting and not contributing, so I figured I'd handle it. They got upset when they found out, despite the top marks we scored. Am I the bad guy here, or did I just save the day? Am I the antagonist for taking my child and leaving our own birthday celebration? I, 34-year-old female, have a really difficult history with my mom, 60-year-old female, for many reasons. For brevity's sake, I'll just say she can be very hypercritical and judgmental. We've had blow-ups in the past, so I try to keep things superficial. She can also be critical of my kids, so again I try to limit contact. My kids are 12-year-old female, 10-year-old male, 7-year-old female. She is especially annoyed by my son because he's hyper. I thought I had a good idea by inviting my mom and my newly widowed grandma to come with us, me and 2 daughters, on a trip to a store in New York for my then 6-year-old daughter's birthday. It's heartbreaking to admit this, but I thought it would be a good idea because my son wouldn't be there, so I thought they couldn't get annoyed. We were going to spend one night there and go to the store in the morning. As soon as we get to the hotel, my daughter was very excited. She kept interrupting the adults and my nana and mom kept snapping at her saying we are talking. I took her aside and nicely explained she needs to be patient and say excuse me. After that, my daughter asked them multiple times if she could read them a story. They brushed her off. We go to eat upstairs and my daughter is sitting next to me. She had a little stuffed animal she brought with her and started making it dance on my shoulder. That apparently bothered my nana, who yelled at her pretty nastily to stop it right now. My daughter started to quietly cry with her head in my lap, which also annoyed them. They made comments like, "Oh, why is she crying? Does she not want to be here? And why does she have to be all over you all the time?" I tried to ignore them and not get mad while trying to soothe my kid. She said she missed her daddy and they rolled their eyes. I was starting to reach my limit. My daughter begged my mom to sit next to her, but she wouldn't. My daughter was telling me about a boy who has a crush on her and we giggled. My mom asked what we were laughing about. I went to answer, but my daughter shot her hand up to cover my mouth because she was embarrassed and said no, don't tell her. When I looked back up at my mom, she looked very annoyed and wouldn't make eye contact with me. Apparently, this bothered them too. So I said, "I have a feeling you want to say something." My nana yells, "Yes, I have never seen a child that needs to be all over her mother and the center of attention all the time." I saw red. I said, "Wow, that must be awful for you. I am so sorry. A child that wants to talk at their own birthday celebration? That's insane. I can't believe you were getting mad at her for acting her age." A bunch of other things were said. My poor daughters were crying, and I felt like the worst mom ever. When we got outside, my youngest was saying that it's all her fault for making them mad, and that she's an idiot. It killed me. Of course, I told her it was not her fault at all. It was mine for thinking this would be a good idea. I felt so low. I dragged my kids out of a birthday celebration I had set up. My mom paid for the hotel room, which makes me feel guilty as well. Am I the asshole? First of all, I just want to say that dealing with family dynamics can be like walking a tightrope, precarious, nerve-wracking, and occasionally you may fall. In your case, it seems like you were attempting a delicate balancing act by trying to include your mom and grandma in a special birthday trip while keeping the peace in your son's absence. However, it is apparent that the situation spiraled out of control faster than a toddler hopped up on sugar. Your mom and Nana's behavior towards your daughter was definitely not a shining example of grandma love and understanding. It seems like they were more concerned with enforcing a code of quiet decorum rather than joining in on your daughter's innocent excitement. Your fiery response was like a verbal flamethrower set to roast, and while it may have been cathartic in the moment, it also left a trail of emotional wreckage. The fact that your daughters felt responsible and your youngest blamed herself is an emotional gut punch. Your attempts to salvage the situation by removing them from the celebration show your concern for your children's well-being, which is commendable. In conclusion, in this wild roller coaster of emotions, you're not necessarily the villain of the story, but perhaps a passenger caught up in a family drama whirlwind. The important thing now is to address the aftermath and ensure that your daughters understand that their worth and joy are not dimmed by the critical lens of others. And next time you plan a family outing, maybe consider leaving the circus tent and clowns at home. Am I the antagonist for kicking my sibling and their spouse out of my house? My brother moved into my home January of 2023 with his wife. They were looking to get out of the craziness of Washington state and offered my home while they looked for jobs, expecting it would be 2-3 months tops. They only had to pay the difference of utilities since they used such a crazy amount of utilities resources. While living with my wife and I, it became apparent very quickly that they were inconsiderate people. Examples: would leave used band-aids on the floor, leave used napkins, tissues everywhere, never pick up used dishes, not put dishes in dishwasher, have us buy food that they never ate and went bad, couldn't play certain games, watch certain TV, listen to certain music. They flooded my spare bathroom, broke my trash can and lied about it, and the list really does go on. Some background. On my brother's work qualifications, he and I are very similar. College graduates and Army veterans. Neither of us do drugs, nor have had any problems with the law. General background. It took me about 2 months from losing my job to getting my first paycheck in this area. Finding an apartment took me a matter of days when I first moved to this state, which is why I only ever expected them to be at my home for 2-3 months. While my brother and his wife didn't start working until May and April, respectively. They went on a vacation, requested start dates be pushed back, and were eating takeout every day. Not the behavior of people struggling and destitute. At the end of May, a full month after both were working, I told my brother that I expected them to start paying half the rent since they're both working, and that it was to start July 1st. He indicated he understood and that he would talk to his wife. This would have given them both a full 2 months of work paychecks. Since they started working, they have been looking for a place to stay. Apparently apartments are insufficient, and they wanted to rent a house, which only added time to finding a place to stay. They did manage to find a place and had keys to move into the new place just before July 1st, though not all utilities were set up like internet and hot water. They made it clear they weren't going to start moving in for another 2 weeks, once internet was installed, and would take their time completing the move, essentially saying they will be there for the month of July. I asked my brother about paying rent. He assumed I would forget about it and never brought it to his wife's attention. Him and his wife made a big stink saying they were poor and didn't have money to pay rent, saying they didn't feel welcome in my home and that I was taking advantage of their situation. I offered them 3 options: pay in full, pay when they get their next paycheck, or move out. They chose to move out into their new house the next day. I think I did the right thing, but it seems to have disrupted the family dynamic and I'm second-guessing myself. Am I the asshole? In this situation, it seems like you acted fairly and reasonably given the circumstances. Your initial agreement with your brother and his wife was for a temporary stay while they found jobs, not a long-term arrangement that would allow them to take advantage of your generosity. Asking them to contribute financially after they had been employed for some time was a reasonable request. It's understandable that you were feeling frustrated with their inconsiderate behavior and lack of contribution while staying in your home. Setting clear expectations and giving them multiple options to rectify the situation shows that you were willing to work with them, but also had boundaries that needed to be respected. Ultimately, it sounds like you handled the situation appropriately and prioritized your own well-being. While it may have caused some tension within the family, it's important to prioritize your own needs and boundaries. So in this case, you are definitely not the asshole. Am I the antagonist for giving my child's room to my grandchild? I am a 56-year-old woman, and I have 3 children: Brad, 32, Emma, 29, and Sophia, 23. Brad lives about 4 hours away, Emma just recently moved back home, and Sophia still lives with my husband and I. Emma was engaged and the relationship became abusive, so we urged her to stay with us for a while for both safety reasons and financial reasons. She is 32 weeks pregnant with her first child, our first grandchild. She works hard but took a financial hit when her relationship ended, and home prices are insanely high here. We have a nice-sized 4-bedroom home that we've owned since the kids were little. All 3 of our kids had their own bedrooms, and Brad's room is currently vacant except for the few times a year he visits. Brad moved out about 3 years ago and did not at all take care of his room. I had to do a lengthy cleanup when he moved out, and the room has been needing to be redone for quite a while. I told Emma that I would happily help her renovate Brad's room for the baby. The baby will be sleeping in her room the first few months anyway, but the nursery will give her a dedicated space to keep the baby's things, and for baby to sleep once the bassinet is outgrown. My only caveat was that the room needs to have a bed for Brad's visits. When he comes home, he can either stay in his old room and the baby can be in a pack and play with Emma, or Emma can stay in the baby's room and Brad can stay in hers. It's not ideal, but it's the best option for Emma at this time, and we can make it work. I was telling Brad about the plans to renovate his room into a nursery and he freaked out. He said I should have asked him, not told him. He feels I'm trying to erase him from the family and that I'd rather have the baby than him. He said he's not going to visit anymore or come home for holidays because he won't feel welcome. He feels his sister was irresponsible to get pregnant and that she's not owed his childhood bedroom for her child. He feels it has sentimental value, and I'm just getting rid of that without second thought. I disagree with him wholeheartedly. I love all my kids and my unborn grandchild, and I'm just trying to do right by all of them with the resources I have. He comes home very few times a year, less than 10 nights per year. And to me it just doesn't make sense to have a vacant room when we could really use that space for a baby. Am I the asshole for just giving away his childhood bedroom? First of all, let me just say, your family sounds like a real-life soap opera, with a sprinkle of Brady Bunch dynamics. Now, onto the serious business with a pinch of humor. 56-year-old Mama Bear, it seems like you're caught in a classic case of sibling rivalry meets grown-up responsibilities. While you're playing Tetris with bedroom assignments, Brad's throwing a tantrum fit for a toddler who's been told they can't have dessert before dinner. On one side you've got Emma, the damsel in distress turned supermom-to-be, and on the other, Brad, the prodigal son who's holding on to memories of his teenage rebellion like they're going out of style. It's a battle royale of familial proportions. In all honesty, you're not maliciously trying to Photoshop Brad out of the family portrait. You're just rearranging the furniture to make space for the newest, and probably cutest, addition to the clan. Sure, Brad's feeling a bit left out, like the forgotten middle child in a sea of changing dynamics. But hey, he's a grown man who can handle a room makeover or two. So, are you the asshole for repurposing Brad's childhood abode into a baby haven? No antagonist here, you're just a savvy mom trying to navigate the choppy waters of family life. But hey, maybe offer Brad a cookie and a pat on the back next time you break the news. It might soothe his wounded inner child's ego. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.